So, without further ado, welcome everyone. Thanks for joining us on our Last Chance to Paint webinar, joined by artist John Dyer today, which is really exciting. Today, we're learning about a very special animal, and because it's that time of year, we're looking at reindeer. So it's a little bit of a Christmas special here today. My name is Charlie. My colleague Laura is in the background, and she'll be able to answer some of your questions. But yeah, without further ado, it's my absolute delight to introduce artist and creative partner of Born Free, John Dyer. So say hello, John.
Hi, everybody. Thank you, Charlie. Thanks so much. And thank you to everybody, whether you're at a school or home educator, for joining us and putting the time to one side.
As well as being a really talented artist, John is the founder of Last Chance to Paint, which is a project that aims to connect children and with nature through art and creativity. And you can find all of John's Last Chance to Paint creative schemes of work on the Born Free and Last Chance to Paint's website, so including topics such as Precious Africa and the Amazon rainforest as well. So if you're interested in any of those, please do go and look those up after. We'd love for you to be part of the journey.
Last Chance to Paint is a fantastic opportunity to breathe, relax, learn about wildlife, people and places, and today to learn about the wonderful animal, the reindeer. And hopefully we can produce a beautiful painting together today based on the reindeer. And Charlie will help us to just learn so many facts and interesting things about these amazing animals that are so integral to the Northern Hemisphere, to that cold biome, and also to the wonderful celebration of Christmas and the events around that. So yeah, so thank you for joining us.
So John's going to share what he's going to create for you guys today, and hopefully you're going to be able to create as well in your classrooms, which is really exciting. So we're just going to share our screen, and hopefully then you can see a beautiful painting of some reindeer.
Yeah, that's right. I thought I'd start with this. So just to reiterate what Last Chance to Paint does, it's something I realized whilst painting around the world as Eden Project's artists in residence. I would go to an area like a rainforest or, reindeer we're doing today, and I'd go in not knowing very much about it. And through the process of me creating my paintings, I would come back not only having learned all about the subject, but I'd be totally connected to it. And then I would strive in my life where I could to help to protect it in small ways. And we'll talk about that more later in the webinar. But today, because we're dealing with a very interesting biome, the tundra in the Arctic, I thought I'd like to show you what we're aiming to do today in the next hour. And hopefully that will be quite exciting, because there's going to be quite a lot of flat areas, because in the tundra, there's just very low growing plants, lichens, and moss. It's not really a forested area. There will be pockets of forest in areas, but what we're looking at is the tundra and how that environment, that landscape, relates to the reindeer. So I thought, let's show you what we're aiming for. And there's beautiful colours in the sky. That's the northern lights, so it makes it very Christmassy. And then we've got blobs of snow floating down as well. So it's kind of how the reindeer are. So that's what we're all going to end up with. So have a good look at that. And I'm just going to show you how I put this together. I just do this, and then hopefully you can see how I put the paint on. And I don't normally do this in the webinar, but I thought for today, because there's lots of white and lots of blue, no trees until we get to the reindeer, I thought we'd do that, because you might feel just a little bit sort of like, oh, what are we doing? So I think that might help the teachers as well to see where we're going with this. Yeah, and that's hopefully at the end of the hour, I'll have that. And do you see how that light, I'll just show it one more time. Do you see how the light from the northern lights, that lovely emerald green, and then I slowly make it brighter by putting sort of paler colors. And then right at the end, I take some of those colors and spread it, it's very quick, so pay attention. Spread it across the antlers on the reindeer's back, and a little bit catching on those snow-capped peaks in the background. It's going to happen anytime now. Boom. And that sort of brings the whole painting together. If you're using watercolor, I would definitely leave the sort of bottom area of the painting as white paper. And then what we'll do is we'll put in just a few little areas of gray, some very, very pale mauve, some very sort of icy blues, just in areas in and around the reindeer. So if anybody's doing watercolor, just keep piping up in the chat, and Laura will put those questions through, and I can talk you through both both processes, but I generally talk from the position of acrylics or poster paints or those powder paints, which you can layer up. I will be putting white down, and I suggest that we'll be working wet on wet. So I think it's really important to understand you don't have to like produce the best painting of your life here, and it might not be finished. It's the process and the learning that's important more than the final painting. And for me, I won't necessarily finish this in the hour either, but we'll just do our best. But yeah, like Charlie says, if you want to leave some white areas, please do. That's up to you. You can always put some white on afterwards. I'm going to just layer it on as I normally do, I think, and see how we go. But please tell me to slow down if needs be. I know Charlie will. And hopefully we'll end up with some fab reindeer paintings. And I do have some reference. I'm not just making this up from my head. I've got reference of a reindeer in front of me that I'll be working from. And that's another reason I wanted to show you the sort of final result so you could see that. But if you just work along with me, I'll make it as simple as possible. And we'll learn all these wonderful things about the reindeer as we go along.
Amazing. We've got a couple of schools that have said, yeah, we're using watercolours. So if you're able to talk them through that as well, John, that's been really helpful.
That's fine. I'll do both. I'll do both as we go along. So yeah, so what I'll do is I'm just going to start. I've got a few questions to ask Charlie about this because I'm learning about reindeer too, which is really lovely for these webinars. But let's get some paint down so it can start to dry, and then before we move on to that. So the first thing we're going to do, whether we're using poster paints or acrylics or watercolors, we're going to put that sky in. The only difference is if you're using watercolors, you want to leave the peaks of those mountains as white. All right, so I'm just going to help those schools, I'm just going to put a line on my page here, which will just show you where, and you can just basically decide where you want some peaks of some hills or mountains. It doesn't really matter. So if you just sort of sketched on with a pencil, if you're doing watercolor, that sort of shape, and then you can flood in blues and purples above that. All right, but we probably want to keep those hills white if you're doing watercolor. Watercolor is it's lovely and it's easy for some things. It's not always the easiest for this type of project. But if you do that and the children doing that, then you won't suddenly go, oh, well, how do we get the white hills back? So do that. Everybody else, you don't need to do that. All right, so first of all, I'm going to choose some beautiful deep dark blues for the sky because we're going to get the northern lights really shining out from here. Just going to make sure I've got my page, yeah. So I'm using an app called Procreate on my iPad. Procreate, they very kindly and proudly supported our first expedition to the Amazon rainforest, but their app is one of many painting and drawing apps you can use on an iPad. And I normally work acrylic on canvas, but for this we found the iPad is by far the best way of simply showing you full screen in your classrooms what I'm doing. The process is broadly the same whether I'm using paints or whether I'm using the iPad. I use a mix of blues and I sort of blend them together on the page. Now you can see I'm going over my mountains like that, but if you're doing watercolor, don't do that. I want you to use those mountains as an outline so that you keep the paper. And then you can keep putting on colors, and you don't have to match my colors at all. You can change them. You could have more mauves. I mean, you could even have like you could have like bright cyan colors. You could even have a hint of at the end of the winter as the sun finally rises above the horizon for the first time in months. You could have that kind of look. It's entirely up to you. So you can use your creativity, but I'm just aiming to get rid of the white of my digital canvas or my digital piece of paper just to set the scene. That's as simple as that. So you can just work into it. The colors will blend, so don't feel you have to mix each color separately in a mixing container. You just blend the colors on your page. If it gets too dark, just add a little dot of white and then brush that white through and you'll find it all comes alive, okay? So once you've got that, we're kind of half done. You know, it's one of the reasons I wanted to show that final picture. Now, for those of you using acrylics or poster paint, then we're going to move on to white, and then you'll see on my color selector there that I've got a whole range of whites and blues, and if I went to oranges, I've got sort of whites and pinks and oranges, but I'm going to be in the blue area of this. So, but I'm not going to choose an exact white because we're going to use the perfect white or the white out of your paint pot or the white of your paper, if you're doing watercolor, we're going to use that for the highlights. So we're going to be a little bit precious about white. So we're going to actually make it a slightly gray color. So that you need to do a little bit of careful mixing. So you can either pre-mix, or you can put white on your paper and add tiny, and I mean tiny amounts of blue paint, really tiny amounts. And then when I paint on here, you can see it looks like a gray, and that might be a little bit too gray. So I'm going to just brighten mine up a bit, but it doesn't really matter. It's all going to work in well with the painting, and I'm just going to develop some hills in the background, slightly different to what we had before.
And John, does it actually matter if, when the children are painting this, if it gets a bit kind of muddled up between the sky and the horizon?
No, not at all. No, it'd be lovely, because we're going to put some snowflakes in afterwards, and when that's all going to blend, it's going to get all hazy. We're just setting the scene for this really extremely harsh environment where the reindeer are adapted to survive. So I'm just going to keep putting this in, and then I can ask Charlie a few questions. But in fact, while I'm just doing this, because I think you can follow along, this is quite simple, so, there's the tundra habitat is an important one, but why is the tundra important, Charlie? What is tundra environment, and why do we need it? What's happening with that?
So tundra, it is, as you said, very cold, very harsh landscape. It actually, the word tundra comes from a Finnish word, which is tunturi, and that actually means treeless plain. So there are very, very few trees, if any at all, in the tundra. Like John said, there might be some pockets here and there, but the vast majority of the tundra landscape is very low-lying plants. And it is quite barren, as you can see. So there'll be snow cover during the colder winter parts of the year. And in the summer months, there will be small, low-lying plants, things like lichen, small shrubs, and that is the whole landscape, really. So unlike a rainforest where there's lots of different variety, lots of different plants, there's quite a low amount of different plants that have survived to live there. So it is a pretty amazing habitat. The reason it's so important, though, is because it is home to those animals and to those plants. So they can't survive anywhere else. So they're really specialized to survive in this habitat and in this environment. And the thing with the tundra habitat and the tundra biome, it is the coldest biome on the planet. It stretches all around kind of the northern hemisphere. And essentially, because it is so cold, the ground, just a few centimeters below the surface, that stays frozen pretty much all the time permanently. So it's known as permafrost. And that ground stays frozen, and it means that temperatures are very, very cold. Average winter temperatures can be -34, which is unfathomably cold. And even in the summer, it's still pretty chilly. Average summer temperatures, they range between 3 and 12 degrees. Now, it's around here in the UK between 10 and 12 degrees today. So their summer is pretty much like our winter. It is really, really cold. But because it is so cold, and because that ground is frozen, it means that any of the plants that are there that end up dying, or any animals that end up dying, they decompose really, really, really slowly. And that means that any of those plants and animals that have died, they store carbon away in the tundra landscape, which is amazing. So it's actually a huge, huge carbon store. So it's a really, really important habitat, not only for the wildlife, but also for us, because it's keeping carbon dioxide out of the air, and it's keeping that carbon locked away in the ground, which is really, really important.
Charlie, sorry to interrupt. So you're talking about that locking up all the carbon from the animals when they pass away, and the plants when they rot down, and that natural, amazing process of life that keeps this planet going forward. So we're talking this isn't just going on like this year. This has been going on for thousands, hundreds of thousands, millenniums. So there's a lot. So we're talking about a lot of carbon is locked up in the tundra, right? So
absolutely.
Yeah. So you were talking about so it needs to stay locked up. So why would it not be locked up? It's what indicates that they might be getting unlocked up to me. Does that sense?
You are right, John. So because of climate change, which many of you will probably have heard about, so that is where greenhouse gases that are produced from us creating things like energy, using our cars, heating our homes, that is increasing the amount of carbon dioxide in our atmosphere. That is then trapping in more heat and changing our climates around the world. And the average global temperatures are slowly increasing. And essentially, what's happening there is, as I said, it's very cold up in the tundra, but even just those few degrees of global temperature increase that we've had already, that is impacting the tundra, and that permafrost, that permanently frozen layer, which I spoke about, that is starting to melt. And then that is speeding up the decomposition process of all those plants and all those dead plants and animals. And that means that that carbon is no longer being locked away. It is slowly being released into our atmosphere. And it means that actually there's more carbon dioxide going into the atmosphere. So by creating more carbon emissions ourselves, we're actually making it worse for the tundra and then making it worse for ourselves again because we're releasing even more carbon dioxide through the fact that the tundra is starting to warm up and those areas of permafrost are melting. So it is a big problem, not only for, like I said, the wildlife and the animals and the plants that live in the tundra, but also for us, it's having a big impact on us as well.
Yeah, so that is a problem. And like you said, if it warms up, I mean, I know when I've had to defrost my freezer at home, which is rarely, but I do it. It's not many minutes when I turn the power off and it just warms up just a degree. When it just goes a little bit, it only needs to be like a quarter of a degree above freezing, and the whole thing starts to melt. So
yeah,
so I can see as it warms that is an issue.
absolutely. So yeah, one or 2 degrees doesn't sound like a lot, but nature's in a really delicate balance, so it makes all the difference.
Yeah, but if you think of an ice cube in a nice cold drink, that ice cube if it's freezing, if it's zero, it will probably stay as ice. If it's just 0.01 degrees above freezing, it will start to melt slowly. So
absolutely.
yeah. Do you think I can put the Northern Lights in? How's everybody doing with the backgrounds?
Absolutely. We've got one question from one of the schools that said, do we paint white if we're using watercolors? So they might have a little white watercolor section. What do you think, John?
It won't be a huge benefit, but you could do, because it would blend in some of the greys and the mauves and whatever colors you've used, and whatever colors you've got. Don't try and match what I'm doing, because what I'm doing is almost random as well. I mean, we're just reacting. So yeah, you could do, and you might find that some of that white, if you at the end of the painting, if you use it quite thick, so you sort of make a little puddle of thicker white in the little pan of white watercolor, you can use that to dot on little layers of white for snowflakes or little highlights. So, and for example, and this applies to the acrylics and poster as well. But at the end for the watercolors, if you choose a pure white, so literally white straight out of the tin, as it were, then on the side of the hills, we can then actually apply. Do you see? We can actually make it look like they've got light or they've got snow on one side, because we didn't use a pure white anywhere else. And then we can actually develop light on our snow. Do you see how that just comes in? That's why we've not gone for a pure white. So I think you could use the white watercolor, as long as it's relatively thick, to do that. So it's entirely your choice. The best way to learn is just to try. If it's a total fail, you go, well, that was a fail, I won't do that again. And if it's a success, you learn. That's that, which is great. So
that is great advice, John.
Yeah, that's
I love
basically
it.
That's how that all the best learning in life happens when you fail. So celebrate failures, as long as they're not dangerous, of course. But in school, if it doesn't work out, that probably means you didn't know it, and therefore you're learning. So it's the same with painting. But for those that are catching up, I think they should be just about got the backgrounds down. But I'm just going to put the Northern Lights in, because that's just a beautiful event. I've never seen it, although it has been over Cornwall, but I saw lots and lots of people in Cornwall when it got down this far, but I didn't see any Northern Lights. But I'm just going to put them in, and I'm going to use a really kind of emeraldy green, and I'm going to start off with one that's not the brightest emerald green, and I'm just going to sketch in this lovely sort of wispiness of the Northern Lights, how they work. So I'm just going to put the painting I had before so I can see that as we're going. And this is as the sun, the sort of corona of the sun sort of blasts out all this energy, and it sort of skips across the atmosphere in the very sort of north, over the sort of North Pole. But it can get down as far as Scotland, and occasionally down even as far as Cornwall, where I am, although I've never seen it. And this is basically the solar radiation just interacting with the Earth's atmosphere. But it just looks so Christmassy and magical, and like the film Frozen and everything good about the North. And it just makes me feel really connected to reindeer and the biome up there, and just in awe of nature, really. So I'm just using, if you're doing this, you'll want to use a soft brush. It will blend into the blues underneath, but that's okay. And I'm putting this on now so it can start to dry down, because then we can go down and brighten it up in a minute, or towards the end if we get time. And just use very gentle brushwork. If you've got a soft brush rather than a hard one, that would be ideal for this. I'm just pressing very gently on my iPad screen to do this. And as we've got that, and I'll just show you what will happen next with that. I then choose an even brighter green, and then I'll go, you don't need to do this straight away. Then I'll go in and then I'll just put an even brighter green to show where it's really luminescing. It's like quite subtle. Another reason for showing you this painting at the beginning, because there's quite a lot of subtlety to this. And then in a moment, we'll get on to the actual important thing, the subject, the reindeer. And do you see how that brighter, pure color going on that slightly muddier version makes it look like it's illuminated? It's a really good trick when you're painting to do that. It's just a really simple thing. And we've got northern lights, and then afterwards we'll do some snow. So
it looks beautiful, absolutely lovely, John. And again, such an amazing spectacle to be able to see, and if you're lucky enough ever to see the northern lights, or if you're at the bottom of the world, if you're at the southern pole, there's the southern lights as well, which is really cool.
Yeah, that would be great, wouldn't it? Do both. But yeah, I've never seen them, but yeah, what a spectacle. But we know they're there and they move around, and it just makes you feel either, I think, like part of something enormous of our whole galaxy and the universe, or it can make you feel very, very small, in which case everything becomes very precious. You're precious, the reindeer's precious, that lichen's precious, because it's so vulnerable. So you can, both ways, I think, are an amazing view of the world, to be honest. So, which is great. But yeah, Charlie, we're just at the schools catch up for a minute with that, and then I'll start on the reindeer. But you were talking about the tundra melting and things, and I'm aware that the stuff that we do in the tundra, like pipelines or even driving around or even walking and stuff, that can have an impact on the surface, can it?
Yeah, absolutely. So the kind of soil, it's very poor soil. Like I said, it's made up of all those the dead and decaying plants, and it's quite dark. So if people disturb the tundra when there's no snow on it, if they create footprints, for example, if they drive vehicles over it, which can happen if people are, for example, wanting to explore for mining or moving, like you said, big pipelines around to exploit things like natural gas. Those kind of footprints and those tire tracks, they can stay in the landscape. It takes a long time for plants to regenerate and recover those areas. So what can actually happen is, because it's so dark, when there is that little bit of warmth and sunlight in the summer, it means that those actually increase the rate that that part of the ground melts. And so it can cause a perpetual problem. It can keep getting worse and worse and worse, because as the sun hits those tracks or those footprints, it melts, and then it can cause bigger holes, and eventually those holes can actually become massive gullies, and it can be a real problem. There's a big problem at the moment in parts of the tundra where huge areas are collapsing because of kind of sinkholes and things, and that is because of this permafrost melting. And it can be as simple as a footprint or a small tire track that starts it off, as well as the kind of change in temperature. So it's a really kind of delicate environment up there.
It is. It is amazingly fragile, isn't it? Because you'd think of it all being frozen solid and being basically as solid as rock and robust. And at first glance, it doesn't look at all fragile. It just looks like a bleak, it can look like a bleak kind of hostile environment that's there to take you down or take wildlife out. But actually, it's really what you're describing. It's delicate, almost like a cobweb. It's like you unpick one bit and the whole thing starts to fold up. So Yeah, that's
Yeah,
interesting. So
absolutely.
we can help, each individually, we can do our best to sort of reduce our sort of reliance on those pipelines which take oil and fossil fuels where we can, I guess. So
Yeah, absolutely. So there's loads of things that we can do. So the tundra, it can seem a really long way away. Some of us may never visit it. Um, but it is really important. Like I said, protecting this habitat actually is really important for us because by keeping it frozen, by keeping it cool, we're not making climate change even worse. And that impacts our weather systems, that impacts our food production. So it is really important that we help protect these landscapes. And there are so many things that we can do at home to help protect the tundra, to protect the wild herds of reindeer, all the other wildlife and plants that live up there. So lots of different things we can do. So using less kind of energy. So if you can take the train, if you can use public transport, if you can cycle your bike, that helps to save carbon. That's a really amazing thing you guys can do. Whether you want to scoot to school instead, amazing, go for it. Rather than driving, it makes a really big difference for the whole planet, really. As well, other things you can do, you can try things like meat-free Mondays, for example. I know some schools already take part in meat-free Mondays because, again, eating less meat, it means that we're producing fewer emissions, which is really important to protecting habitats around the world. And also, I'm sure lots of you listening today, I'm sure loads of you have things like iPads, have things like we all have phones, you'll have TVs, you'll have things at home full of lots of different electronics. And those electronics are full of all sorts of precious metals. And a lot of those metals, so things like gold, things like lithium, those are found in our electronics. And a lot of those metals, they are found in areas like the tundra and other delicate ecosystems as well, like the rainforest. And so in order to get these metals, we are mining these areas. So we are destroying these habitats, and a lot of the time they can really struggle to regenerate. So a really, really important thing you can do, yes, our phones, our tablets, things do break, and that's okay. Things need upgrading, that's absolutely fine. Keep it for as long as you can, but when you do need to get a new electronic item, what you can do with the old one is recycle it, because then that means that those metals, so that all that gold, all that lithium, all those other metals that you have inside your electronics, they are then recycled. We then don't need to go and mine even more from the ground. So that's an amazing thing you can do to help protect habitats all around the world, and including our tundra habitats as well. So lots of things we can all do to help protect the tundra in our daily lives, which is great. We all have the power to do something small to help protect these habitats.
yeah, it is amazing how interconnected our planet is, and the actions we take as individuals in the United Kingdom or in Latin America or wherever we are impacts children of your age and families and people all around the planet, because you'll have all blown bubbles. I'm sure you've all blown bubbles before with a little bubble wand, and you'll see when you blow a bubble, that forms the shape of our wonderful Earth, because that's the way gravity and physics work. But you'll probably also notice the colors on the bubbles, the pinks and the blues as they sweep around. And those patterns sweeping around, very quickly what we do goes all around the planet and does affect other environments and other nations and other peoples. So that's really important. Right, I think we should talk about reindeer, Charlie, and start to draw and paint some reindeer. So I'll just sort of I'll kick this off so that the children can start to rough this out, and then I will ask you all about reindeer, because I know you know everything about reindeer. So so I'm going to lay this out pretty simply. So I've just got a thin. I've now, it's obviously it's just a digital paintbrush, but I would have a thin paintbrush, and I just want you to sketch out a rectangle. So if you just watch me first, and this, I'm going to help you to put together that reindeer that was in the corner of the painting I showed you. So you'll just see as I do this on the screen. So I'm just going to do a line. And don't worry, we're not going to do a square reindeer. This is purely just a guideline just to get you started on how it would be. So if we just sketch in a rectangle like that, unbelievably, that is a reindeer. So we're going to do that. And then what we're going to do now, on the end of that, we are going to do another rectangle. But this one's going to be at an angle. This is just going to go like this. Okay. And these just be very light marks. If you're using watercolor, I suggest you just use a very soft pencil, like a 4B pencil or a pencil, but don't do this heavily. Or you could use a very pale color of some sort just to sketch it out. With the poster paints and with acrylics, we can sort of go over this. And then once we've got that, then we're going to draw an oval here at the end. So if you can put those three basic shapes on, and while the children are doing that, can you explain to me what's the difference between a caribou and a reindeer is, Charlie?
So they are the same.
No, they're not. They can't be the same. They've got
yeah. So caribou, they're known as caribou in North America because reindeer, they are found across kind of the polar circle in the north. So in America, they're known as caribou, but they are still reindeer. And then here in Europe, we're much more familiar with the name reindeer. And rein, again, it's another kind of word that's come from the Scandinavian countries. So rein actually means horned animal in Norse. So while they don't have horns, they've actually got antlers. That's where their name comes from, which is pretty
that's
cool.
Cool. That is pretty cool. So caribou are reindeer and vice versa. Mm-hmm. It's just a different name. Yeah. So where do we find reindeer? Are they just where are caribou? They're in North America, yeah? And is that right? And then we've got reindeer in sort of Norway in the Arctic Circle. Are those all the places they are? Is that where they are?
So yeah, they live across the Arctic, so Greenland, Scandinavia, all the way across to Russia, Alaska, Canada. So they live all the way around that kind of Arctic Circle, which is incredible. And they can travel.
Are they all reindeer, or are they like rhino, where you get like the black rhino and the Javan rhino and the northern white rhino, the southern white rhino? Or are they just all just reindeer?
So they're all essentially one species, but there are different subspecies. So whilst they can kind of breed together, they would become a hybrid. And they're ever so slightly different. So they're still the same species, but they've got their own unique characteristics. So there are 6 subspecies of reindeer. So there are forest reindeer, tundra reindeer, which we're kind of focusing on today. You've got Svalbard reindeer, which if afterwards you can look up a picture of a Svalbard reindeer, they are very cute. They're really small, really dumpy, stocky animals, very white because they're found kind of really far north. You've got the barren ground caribou, so they're obviously in the Canadas and North Americas. Woodland caribou, so most caribou and most reindeer live in the tundra area, but some do live in woodlands a little bit further south. And then we've got the Greenland caribou as well. So they've all got their own little differences, but they are still all one species, which is pretty cool.
Gosh, so many things. Now I'm just going to put the legs on this 3 cardboard boxes I've done, and then I'm assuming, or I'm hoping that all the children are about this point. But if you're not, you can catch up at your leisure. So we've got the leg on our forest reindeer, tundra reindeer, Svalbard reindeer, caribou, all these different reindeers. And I'm just going to develop the actual shape of it now, if that's all right, unless anybody's shouting that it's too fast. So we can kind of almost join the dots here a bit. So let's start with the reindeer's head. So from this corner, we're just going to join the corner of this box here, and we're just going to go down here and then pull out the nose a little bit, a little face, and then up the other side of that oval, and then round here, and they have the neck like that, and then under there, and then we're just going to make that more of an animal shape there. And I'm going to leave my working marks there so you can see as I go along. And then we've got the top of the head like that, and then that goes up. That's going to go up to the neck. It's going to go up to the neck, and they have a bit of a bump there, and then the back goes down. So that's broadly a reindeer shape. The neck can be a little bit longer sometimes. I guess how they're moving, I might make just the front of mine a little bit longer. It seems a little bit short, but this is an adult reindeer. And And with that, I can then start to darken down some of my colors. You can use purples, you can use browns, whatever you've got. More interesting to look at contrast rather than particular colors. So don't worry too much about the color. I'm certainly not, because we're on a clock. And I'm just going to just bring in some darker areas around its nose, like this, and then up here. And then it's got a beautiful sort of eye, which is about here. Very sweet, very good doe-eyed creatures there. Yeah, they are lovely. And so Charlie, we were talking about the tundra and the melt and the difficulties that causes to the whole biosphere, to the plants and to the animals and to us and everything. But are the reindeer okay? Are they thriving? Are their numbers going up? Are they going down? What's happening with reindeer? Why is it last chance to paint? Is it really a last chance to paint?
So interestingly, even though there are around kind of nearly 3 million reindeer on the planet, which sounds like a big number, they are actually classed as vulnerable to extinction. So there's thought to be around kind of 2.8, 2.93 million reindeer around our planet. But the problem is their numbers are decreasing. So they are vulnerable to extinction. And there's lots of reasons that their numbers are going down. And like I said, even though 3 million sounds like a lot, if we think about London as one city, that has a population of 9 million people. And that's just one city here in the UK. Whereas the whole polar region around our planet has 3 million reindeer. So actually, whilst it does sound like a big number, it's actually quite a small amount, really. And they're facing, oh, sorry, go for it, John.
No, sorry. So you basically, if it's London, you've only got, one reindeer between 3 people per population. That's just one city. But yeah, the population's has it been going down then with the change in the tundra and
yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So yeah, because they're a cold weather animal, so the warming climate, that's causing them to struggle. And temperatures up in the tundra region are actually increasing faster than anywhere else on the planet. So this is where most Caribbean reindeer are found. And so as a result, they're really struggling. Spring tends to come earlier than it once did. So the vegetation is changing. Now, in a minute, I think you'll be painting some beautiful lichen. And reindeer, their favourite food is lichen. And sometimes it's even known as reindeer moss because they eat so much of it, they love it. But because of these longer springs, these longer summers, it means that there's actually less lichen available for the reindeer. And it means that there's more woody shrubs, which they find much harder to digest. They're not as high in energy. And then this can have knock-on effects as well. So that it can mean that it's harder for them to put on enough weight to be able to have a baby calf as well. So they are really struggling. And a really interesting one as well that's impacting reindeer is up kind of that part of the world. If you're based in Scotland, you'll be familiar with kind of midge season. So lots of biting insects coming and very irritating and a little bit painful as well if you get bitten by all these insects. There are lots of insects up north as well. So horseflies, mosquitoes, but even parasitic flies, things like bot flies. And because, again, it's getting warmer, these insects have a longer season, and that's causing problems for the reindeer because in order to get away from the biting flies, they spend a lot more time moving around rather than feeding. And again, it means that they aren't putting on enough weight, and it means that less female reindeers are able to have offspring. So their numbers are going down because of all sorts of reasons. And like I said, climate change is causing them real problems, as well as just kind of general things like us destroying their habitat, roads, for example, putting in those pipelines that John talked about to move oil and gas around. So they face a huge, huge amount of threats in the wild.
Gosh, poor reindeer. That, and going back to my fridge freezer, which I defrost, and once it goes a little bit above zero, it all melts. One thing I have noticed with food I keep far too long, if you get a sort of a slightly dodgy fridge freezer, when it melts and then freezes again and melts and freezes again, the food goes rock hard, and it's hard to. Does that affect them getting to the lichens and to the food?
Absolutely. So yeah, that's another really good point. As the ice kind of thaws a little bit, it then can refreeze. So if you have a really cold night, if it's all melted, it can then refreeze, especially if there's things like rain. Rain is becoming more prolific up in the north, whereas before there didn't used to be much rain or snow, really. It's a very low precipitation area. But because climate change is causing our weather patterns to change, it means rain is more likely. And so there might be a layer of fresh snow, which reindeer, they are adapted to dig through snow. They've got amazing cloven hooves. So essentially they've got two parts of their hooves like this, and they are brilliant for digging through the snow. They've got a big kind of concave gap on the back of their hooves, which means they can use it like a big scoop. But if there's snow that has rain on it, this then freezes. The reindeer cannot get through that frozen snow. So they essentially then can't reach their food. And again, this is causing reindeer in some areas to not find enough food. And eventually they can starve in these conditions because they simply can't reach any food that they need. So yeah.
Gosh, so they really are at the front line of, as so many tribal groups and environments and wildlife species are. But it really is a very poignant sort of thing that they're at the front line of that slight change in climate makes a very big difference because of that freezing, not freezing point with the reindeer. So yeah, so right, we have a antlerless reindeer, which looks a bit peculiar. You know, the boy reindeer must be very fed up when their antlers are shed and they look like that. Not at all impressive.
They do. So yeah, they're the only species of deer where both females and males have antlers, but they all shed their antlers at different times. So in the winter, the males will lose their antlers, but the females will keep them. And essentially, we think it's to mean that during the kind of times where there's less food available, the females can also kind of essentially be in charge and reach that food which they need because they'll be carrying their calves. So those male reindeers, they do look a bit sad in the winter. The females still have their antlers. And so people actually saying, with regards to Father Christmas's reindeer, they've still all got their antlers. They must still be female.
Yeah, and they're
pretty cool.
They're magical. So you know they can do all those wonderful things and fly and keep their antlers and do amazing things, which is amazing. But yeah, so I need to fix the antlers. Do we think the schools are up for me doing the antlers now? Because you can.
I think so. I haven't seen anyone asking to slow down yet. So let us know how you're doing in the chat box if you'd like us to wait for a little bit. But this is looking lovely, John. I really, like you said, I love your reindeer and its beautiful big eyes. Now, a really cool eye fact about reindeer, because they love that lichen so much, in order to find lichen in the winter, their eye colour actually changes. So in the summer, they have beautiful golden brown eyes because they don't need to use certain wavelengths of light in order to see, because as John said earlier, up in the Arctic Circle, in the summertime they have very, very long days, to the point where some parts of the Arctic Circle they have 24 hours of sunlight in the summertime, whereas in the winter it's the opposite. So it can get really, really dark. There can be really short days, or there can be 24 hours of darkness. So the reindeer will have to adapt from having lots of sunshine to none at all or very little light. And so in the summer, they've got golden eyes because they've got the sunshine, which helps them see. In the winter, they need to use different wavelengths of light, like ultraviolet light, in order to help them see their food. And so their eyes turn a beautiful, beautiful blue shade, which is amazing. And those blue eyes mean that the reindeer moss, it almost glows to a reindeer, so they can find it really easily, which is pretty cool.
That is very cool, isn't it? And all without contact lenses. That is amazing. These reindeer are very cool. Now, it strikes me that this looks like quite a big animal right in the front of my painting. So if I was stood next to it, would this be quite an imposing sort of like head height sort of animal, like a big horse? Are they big?
They're quite small. So even those different subspecies of reindeer that we talked about, they're all different sizes. like I said, the Svalbard reindeer are particularly small, but all reindeer really are quite small.
Little.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, they are really little. So even males are quite small. Their antlers, that, however, can be very impressive. So they can be almost 1.5 meters long, and they can have up to 44 different tines. So what I mean by tine is all of those points you see on John's reindeer's antler.
There's one. I'll
Every,
just do a tine there. Then there's
yeah,
another tine there.
beautiful. So yeah, each of those little, almost like little twigs off a tree, they're called a tine, and males can have up to 44 tines on their antlers, excuse me. So yeah, they are very impressive antlers, but they are still, yeah, like I said, very, very small. They can be kind of 1.2 meters tall at the shoulder. So if you've got a meter stick with you in your classroom, have a look. See how tall a reindeer is. They are surprisingly short. So some, even like I said, the Svalbard reindeer, they can be up around 80 centimeters tall, which is really, really diddy.
Gosh. And Charlie, do they sort of, if we went to look for reindeer, which we're not doing, but do you find them all in the same place all the time? Do they sort of like hang out in their favorite locations? Do they have to move around because of food? And if they do move around, do they go very far? Are they sort of are they in sort of different sort of clans, or what happens with the reindeer? Do they? Yeah, tell me about that.
So reindeer travel huge distances. So they have one of the longest migrations on Earth. They can travel around 3,000 miles in a single year. So that's around 5,000 kilometers. So that's a little bit like you or me, John, walking all the way to New York, which is
Wow.
a long way.
And they do that just for lichen. I've got some on my garage roof they could have. That is a long way. That is like, yeah, that is basically like, yeah, like walking all the way to New York, or me from Falmouth walking all the way to the south of France, back home again, and then back down again, and back home again.
Yeah, exactly. It's a really long way, and they just are always on the move to find enough food. They'll travel routes that they have traveled for generations, and like I said, it is one of the
Okay.
biggest animal migrations on Earth. Like I said, there's around 3 million reindeer, and some of them travel in absolutely enormous herds together, um,
Gosh. So
which
that's
is
like
really
the
cool.
elephants in Africa and Kenya. They have migratory routes. Like so many animals have their migratory routes. So we whack a new oil pipeline or a road in the middle of their migratory route, that's going to cause severe difficulties for them. Yeah. So that,
Absolutely. So yeah,
yeah.
so some of these pipelines, like we said, they cause problems for the reindeer. They can't travel past them. So using fossil fuels not only has an impact, like I said, on the climate, but can also impact them on the ground because it disrupts their migratory routes. Now, we can do things like mitigate against that. So in some areas, they've lifted these pipelines off the ground to make sure that reindeer can still travel um, along those migratory routes and travel under them. But they
Well, that's
can
good.
still cause problems because if the
Yeah.
pipeline bursts, they can cause pollution as well. So they're not perfect. So renewable energies is a really good way to help protect uh, this Arctic landscape because it means that we're not using those fossil fuels and not disrupting their migratory routes,
So
which
things like
is
solar panels and wind turbines.
absolutely,
Yeah. So that's a really good thing that I think lots of countries are building out, but it's important to keep the focus on that, isn't it? So that happens. But something that's just come to mind, Charlie, is that if they're walking to New York to get lunch, um, the environment, the landscape must change a bit. So do they come across rivers? Do they come across lakes? Is it all just dry, snowy tundra? Is it an easy walk? And if they come
not
across water, what do they do?
not necessarily. So they'll spend most of their time in the snow. As I said, it's so cold that in the wintertime there will be lots of snow, there'll be ice around. But as it warms up in the summertime, that top kind of snow that's on the surface will melt. Obviously, the underneath the permafrost will stay frozen, but it will be a very varied landscape. There will be mountains that they need to climb. There will be huge open landscapes. There will also be rivers and lakes, but caribou are fantastic swimmers. So again, like I said, they use their hooves a bit like a scoop to move the snow. They are also perfectly adapted to helping them swim as well. So their hooves are brilliant. They splay out as well when it starts to get a bit more muddy and a bit more soggy on the ground in the summer. those hooves, they can spread right out so they don't sink into the mud. So they're kind of the perfect all-purpose tool, really, those hooves.
Gosh, so that is amazing. And they're such an integral part of our culture as well, aren't they? And, with in and around Christmas and with obviously with Father Christmas relying on the reindeer for all the present giving, and but also in popular culture and films and things, they crop up, don't they? There's quite interesting history around reindeer with that. So it's just an animal I think that we all take for granted, and we don't really know its story. But occasionally I will see reindeer in and around towns in the UK. In recent years, I've seen quite a few reindeer at Christmas time, and I've always wondered why they're here. Should they be here? Is that good for them? I don't remember that as a child. I mean, I'm 57 now. I'm ancient, but I remember as a child that wasn't a thing. But in recent years, I've seen that. So, which is really exciting. Or should I not be excited, Charlie, about that? They seem to be a long way from home, basically.
Yeah, so they are a long way from home, and also what's really interesting about reindeer is they've actually never been domesticated. So even the herders that you find in areas of Sweden and Finland who have big reindeer herds, they're only ever semi-domesticated. So they are still essentially a wild animal. So that means because they're a prey animal, they get hunted by all sorts of predators. So bears, wolves, even polar bears and eagles can take a caribou calf. So they are very shy animals. They're very wary prey animals. So actually, if we do see reindeers at places like Christmas markets and things like that, parades, they actually can be quite stressful places for reindeer. And whilst they might look very calm, that is actually a defense mechanism for prey animals, because if you react, um, it can draw attention to yourself, and it means that you're more likely to be singled out by a predator. So actually, a reindeer might be stood very still, it might look very calm at a Christmas market, but actually it's a really noisy environment, it's a really busy environment. It's not something that these wild animals are used to. So one way that you can help reindeer is actually standing up for them and saying to venues or parade organisers or event organisers who are using real reindeer, ask them to not use them in the future. Say, actually, it's not the best place for reindeer to be. They prefer to be in wide, open, quiet spaces in the wild where they belong, really. So you can help stand up for reindeer. You can be the voice for them because they don't have a voice. So thinking about that this Christmas, whilst it's lovely, obviously, to get in the Christmas spirit, we obviously don't want to stop people having a lovely time at Christmas, but it can be a really tough time for reindeers. They're very, very different, the reindeers you see at parades, to Father Christmas's reindeer, as John said, which are magical and all female, as we said. But have a think about those reindeers that you see out and about this Christmas and think, actually, can we make their lives better, and say, maybe don't use real live reindeer in the future.
Yeah, so that's very interesting that it's partly they shouldn't really be here, but it's partly because they're a wild animal, like you said. They're not fully domesticated, so genetically they're still completely alert around humans, which makes sense. So yeah, so that's something that you can, if you want to, you can just very gently do by maybe not supporting a reindeer parade. Just don't go and watch it, or just very quietly just write a very polite letter or do a drawing and send it to somebody and say, did you know that reindeer are essentially a wild animal, and they're actually very stressed, and them being so quiet and docile and cute and friendly is their defense mechanism because they're extremely anxious, and it's quite harmful for them. But if you do decide to do that, just do it really gently, really politely. Don't feel obliged to do that. It's just good for you to know on this webinar what's actually happening, because so many things in life to do with the environment or wildlife or with tribal peoples around the world, a lot of things happen inadvertently just simply because people don't know. So raising awareness is what Last Chance to Paint is all about, and a big part of the Born Free Foundation is education, hence working with Charlie in the education team, and that's really good to know. But on the subject of people and reindeer, Charlie. There's a very long, not tradition, but culture of people in the north surviving, co-surviving with reindeer in the tundra, isn't there? And yeah, could you tell me a bit more about that? Because that's a project I'd be very interested to do one day for Last Chance to Paint, to travel and look at reindeer and to get into this, to explore this culture. So just while I'm putting some light on the reindeer's antlers.
Absolutely. So the reindeer have been around for millions of years, but also what's really exciting is reindeer actually used to live here in the UK, which is really cool. So when back in when it was the Ice Age, it was much colder here. We know that there were reindeer here because there is actually a painting of reindeer. So if you're based in Wales, if you're anywhere near the Gower Peninsula, there is some rock art which is found in caves around the Gower Peninsula, and they're thought to be around 13,000 to 18,000 years old, which is incredible. So we know that reindeer were around them. We know that they were important to tribal people and the people living in the Stone Age and hunter-gatherers. And people actually used to follow reindeer. So they were really important for Stone Age hunter-gatherer people. And they followed the reindeer. So as the climate started warming after the Ice Age, people started following them further and further north, which is really cool. So it actually influenced the way people moved around. But even today, as John said, there are still tribal cultures that actually use and need reindeer to survive. So they have semi-domesticated herds, as we said, so they are still essentially wild animals. And the people, the Sami people who herd these reindeer, they're really incredible. They depend on them for their survival, and they will follow these herds around. So they're nomadic people who will essentially follow their herd of reindeer, and they'll use them for milk, they'll use them for meat, and also for clothing as well. But yeah, it's incredible. These reindeer are really important to people now, as they have been for thousands of years.
Yeah, and it's a natural relationship. We sometimes, I think, we think of ourselves as somewhat separate from nature because we've got our, our nice, comfy, well, hopefully nice and comfy, homes. So there's that disconnect, but actually we are part of the natural system, and we have every right to be on our planet, and we have every right to interact with nature, and we have evolved and grown with the natural world over the years. And it's only when we go completely out of balance with it that we become a problem. But you only need to make small changes to be in balance. But yeah, the Sami culture is very interesting, and they have beautiful fabrics as well, and beautiful colors of blues and reds of the clothing they wear. So hopefully one day we'll do that as a Last Chance to Paint chapter, which would be good. So yeah, so are there any questions about the painting from schools? Anything? How are they doing? Because I'm just about to put some snow on mine, which will be
brilliant.
Yeah, so if we think we can go to that. So I've done a smaller reindeer at the back. It's very kind of naive looking, but it's just because the time is kind of ebbing away. So I'm just going to move on to some snow. So I'm going to use...
Oh, I think it's very sweet, John.
I'm going to use some pure white now. So once we've got pure whites, this is white straight out of the tube, or white, kind of thickened up white in your watercolor pan, in your watercolor paint. And then you can get a little brush, and then you can start to bring in some highlights in the snow. So in the grey areas, you can put some little patches wherever you want, where there might be snow. And then actually you can put on little blobs of snowflakes in the sky to make it super Christmassy for our Christmas reindeer special. And hopefully your parents and guardians and your teachers will love to have your paintings pinned up somewhere in the house this Christmas of the reindeer. It'll be a very special thing. Pop it on the fridge if you've got some fridge magnets, or pin it on the wall somewhere, obviously with permission from your folks. And hopefully your paintings that you do with us on Last Chance to Paint, and I very much hope that the schools with us today will look at the wider project, which I'll talk about in a minute. But, a painting, however it comes out today of the reindeer, I think hopefully you'll be really pleased with it. And once it goes up on the wall, it could be there. Let's say you're age 8 today. There'll be hopefully plenty of 8-year-olds. All the age groups are great, but in 20 years' time, there's a fair chance that in whatever the family home is, maybe that painting might still be up on the fridge or up on the wall. Certainly in my parents' house, and I'm 57. They've still got things of mine around, and I've got my daughter's paintings around them. My eldest is 26, and there's paintings she did at primary school around. And do you know what? If you've got a painting of wildlife, you have reindeer in this case, and you've learnt all about them today, that painting will continually radiate that message, that positive hope for reindeer and for the climate and the tundra, and therefore us all the time. And I hope it will remind you of some of the things that Charlie's spoken about as well, and just remind us all just to be gentle in the way we go about our lives, because as I said, we've got every right to be on planet Earth, and we've got every right to leave footprints. We just want to leave us tread gently as we can, and not just bulldoze through environments and create energy crises and be wasteful. It's just, if we all just tweak it a little bit in the right direction, we end up in a much better place and avoid ending up at a really difficult place. And I think that there's enough indications on planet Earth to give us a heads up. We just need to tweak what we're doing so we can preserve these beautiful environments, whether they're the tundra, as we're doing today, whether they're the rainforest or the savanna, or your own backyard, because it's all integrated, it's all connected. So it's a beautiful thing. And for me, doing the painting, it just really sort of solidifies and bolts in some of this information for me. I go away from every webinar knowing a whole load of things I didn't know before with that. So I love putting snowflakes on.
They are beautiful. So yeah, I'm sure you can do either little blobs, or you can do them a little bit more finely, like those amazing snowflakes you sometimes see with the kind of symmetrical shapes, which is beautiful. Yeah. John, we've had a request, if that's okay. Can you recap how to paint the Northern Lights on?
Yes, absolutely. I'll do a new one. I will cram another Northern Light in. So I'm going to choose, you can see me, I don't know whether you can see, can I move this over a bit? Perhaps it's tucked behind there.
Yeah, we can see that paint.
I've just moved it over. I was just aware it might be behind the Zoom windows. Right. So I'm choosing a sort of a greeny cyan color, but you get them in sort of pinks and blues and cyans and greens. They change colors, so you can choose any color. So you can see on my color wheel here, which is a bit like you mixing, I've got a whole choice of different colors, from the very kind of muddy ones up to the really bright. So first of all, I'm going to choose one that's not the brightest. I'm just going to tone it down a little bit, sort of muddy it. And once I've got that, then I can paint on, I'll stop this over here. I'll do one at the top here, just going around my snow. So I'm just going to use a slightly softer brush, and I will just very gently just mark on a Northern Light like that. I haven't got a lot of space, but that one up there. So it looks really mystical. So you can put a few little brush strokes. I mean, I've set my Apple Pencil up to kind of indicate, it works a bit like wet paint. Once I've done that, I then choose the brightest form of that color. So you need to mix a new version of it, or if you've got a bright green or bright pink, then you go back on it, and then you just put a little bit of extra bright on the top, and it looks like it's lit up. It's just a real trick of color. And then once I've got that bright color, and I know we're in the last sort of 5 minutes or so probably of the webinar, we can then do what I call a story of color. So we've got the white snow, and that's interacting with the tundra. The white is interacting with the white on the reindeer around its eyes and where some of the fur's picking up. And but also I'm going to use some of this green on the antlers. And while I do that, Charlie, can you tell me about how they stay warm? Because I've just mentioned fur, and that struck me as that's how they stay warm, because they've got brilliant fur, I think.
Yeah, so they've got a double layer of fur. So you might, if you've got a pet dog at home, for example, you might know that some of them have double fur to keep them nice and insulated, nice and warm. Now, reindeers have this, but they also have hollow fur as well. And what I mean by that is if you were to cut open a reindeer hair, essentially, there'll be a big hole in the middle. And that is because air is a really good insulator. It's a really good way of keeping warm. So by having that airspace in their hairs, it means that they are kept nice and toasty. So it's a really great adaptation. Other animals that live in the kind of polar regions, such as polar bears, also have hollow fur, and it just gives them that extra layer of warmth because they're trapping all that nice air in and keeping really nice and warm. And as we've got on the screen, John's done a beautiful kind of brown, grey, white caribou. Caribous in different areas. So like the Svalbard caribou, for example, they might have paler fur. The woodland caribou might have browner fur, and that's to help them camouflage into their environment better. But yeah, they are absolutely incredible animals, John, like you said. So they are so well adapted to living in their tundra home.
They really are, aren't they? They're super adapted with that. And yeah, and as are the Sami people. So am I right in thinking, because I know that the Sami traditional dress, the sort of reds and the blues and things, was that, have they sort of used the Sami tribal sort of look in the film Frozen? Did that appear there? Or was that just making that up?
No, so if you've watched Frozen 2, actually,
Okay.
there's a tribe called the Northuldra tribe. Sorry if I have said that incorrectly.
That was very brave, Charlie.
But yeah, they are based on the Sami people. So the reindeer herders that we spoke about earlier. So yeah, they're based on those herders that still herd reindeer to this day. So yeah, if you love Frozen 2, those are based on the Sami people, which is really amazing.
And Sven is a reindeer in that film, is that right?
Yes, he is.
Sven's the reindeer. So just while they're finished, everybody's finishing off. So just to go back to Last Chance to Paint, if you're new to us, so lastchancetopaint.com. If you haven't come across the website yet, if you've just seen an email and you've come straight into the webinar, and we're very pleased to see you, but we'd love you to go to lastchancetopaint.com, sign up, become a member of that. It's all free. And we've got 3 big expeditions that you can follow with your class. So we've got an expedition which you can travel, in inverted commas, with me and the team to the Yawanawa tribe in the Amazon rainforest, meet the children there, see their art, see me painting the forest, learn all about how they live. You can play the children a daily video. You can download the free teacher notes from test.com. All the links are on Last Chance to Paint. You can play them tribal music. You can show them photographs that we took. You can view the thousands of paintings of children from around the world and hopefully inspire and read a daily blog that we've got there for you. So you can run it over about a week or so, in amongst other work at the school. And then hopefully the children will do like the best painting they've ever done of the rainforest. It might be they want to do the tribal village, or they might want to do a beautiful boa constrictor or a toucan or the canopy, something they bond to. And then if you've got the time, you can upload it to Last Chance to Paint, and we will add it to the World Gallery, so it bears witness to what we all risk losing. It's a very powerful thing, and but it's always optimistic. It's always from a point of view of hope and optimism. You can also travel with me to Borneo to meet the Beguiling orangutans and paint orangutans, and to meet the Penan people and go through the rainforest and see the bat exodus from the caves at Mulu. Extraordinary. So please travel with me there. And then come with me and the team and the Born Free team to Kenya to meet the Maasai tribe and to see the beautiful elephants and the very last 2 northern white rhino on planet Earth. It's a very emotional time painting those. Again, do your paintings, send them in. Let's bear witness to what we risk losing, i.e. let's remind ourselves not to lose anymore. And then if you can, I'd love you to join me and the Born Free team in India at the end of January in 2026, where we will be live and we will be looking at the habitat which inspired the Jungle Book by Rudyard Kipling and the habitat where the tigers live. And they're down to only about 3,000 or so tigers living in the wild. So they're very endangered. So whether we see a tiger or not, I can't promise, but we'll be looking at the Gond people, tigers and that environment. So we'd love you to get involved as much as you can. Hopefully the whole time we do a Q&A with you. When we're live, we'll answer your questions in the video the next day or the blog the next day. And in between times, use the Q&A and I will answer. And if I don't know, I'll ask Charlie to answer because she knows so much more than me.
Thank you so much. We had some people saying that they've had a lovely session, the Grange Primary School. They've learnt so much, all the way up from Liverpool, which is amazing. Fantastic. Some people are going to upload their photos, which would be fantastic. So yes, please do let us see your images. So you can either upload those to the World Gallery, as John said, on the Last Chance to Paint website, or if your school has any social media, do tag Last Chance to Paint or Born Free in those images. We'd absolutely love to see what your class has been up to. Be absolutely incredible. And as John said, please do join us for our live expedition to India in January, which would be absolutely amazing to see some of you guys asking questions as he travels across India to hopefully find some tigers. But yeah, thank you so much. We've got so many people saying thank you, John, we've loved it. So we've got Bridport Primary School, Thorngrove, Sarum Hall School. Thanks so much for joining us. We're so pleased that you've enjoyed it. If you've enjoyed today, both John and Born Free have free teaching resources on our websites. Born Free also has a free educational magazine which schools can sign up for, and you can also contact us if you would like free educational workshops for your school. You can also sign up to our monthly kids email newsletter and you can share that with your class. It's full of all kinds of cool animal facts which we send out monthly to schools. And like I said, any questions, please do get in touch. You can contact us education@bornfree.org.uk. But yeah, thank you so much. We've got even more people, John, saying thank you so much. Thank you from Winterbourne Junior School, Thornhill again. Fantastic. I'm so pleased that you've enjoyed today. We've really enjoyed the session. I've loved learning about and talking about reindeer as well.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, everybody. And if you celebrate Christmas, very happy Christmas. And if you don't celebrate Christmas, have a lovely holiday season. And hopefully we'll see you again on our webinars and at Last Chance to Paint. Thank you.